100,000. Nobody believed that 100,000 cars a year could be sold in India, considering that till then maximum sales were 40,000 cars a year. Everybody wanted. Ratan Tata was driving the Maruti 800. Arun Nehru was driving the Maruti 800. Rajiv Gandhi drove the 800. I mean, everybody was driving the 800. Maruti succeeded because it had the workers working as if they were partners in the company. Huge difference that we do not respect people for their skills. We do not understand that you can never succeed unless you have all members of your organization working as a team.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Table Talk. It has been 40 years, believe it or not, since Maruti 800 came into our conscience, our public imagination and changed middle-class India. Until then, the country alternated between the Fiat and the Ambassador cars. But a small car changed the game. It became a status symbol, a symbol that an aspirational India could dream of beyond the boundaries. India was on wheels, and it was the stuff folklores are made of. Well, before I introduce today's guest, here is full disclosure, we are related. But it is a story I felt that was worth mentioning. On December 14, 1983, when the then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi handed over the keys to the first recipient of the Maruti 800, an Indian Airlines employee, and he paid a measly 47,500 rupees, no one could have imagined that history was in the making. One man's name will always be synonymous with the consumer and automobile revolution in the country. After a successful stint of 25 years as an IAS officer, C Bhargava joined Maruti on a one-year contract. He is still its chairman. And he joins me today to speak of not just Maruti's story, but his journey as well. So thank you very much for doing this. Today, I want to take you down memory lane. And I want to take you down to as far back as December 1983. Indira Gandhi handed a set of keys to a man, collateral legend, so to speak, he became, Harpal Singh. You were there at that moment. Is this one of those memories, that are top of your list?
It was for us a function where we felt hugely relieved because for the past almost 2 years, we had been under tremendous pressure to get the car out in the market before the end of 1983. You know the background. Nobody thought this project was ever going to see the light of day or succeed or anything like that. And we were afraid that if we failed, then the consequences of failure may not be so palatable, given that it was Mrs. Gandhi's personal sort of project. So once the car came out, it was handed over and the function was proceeding smoothly, the biggest feeling was one of relief.
So did you go sit down somewhere after that when that function was over and just take a moment out?
I think after that we all went back and slept for a long time to just relax for a day or two, I think, that this is done with.
So, 40 years of Maruti 800, did you ever think when you started out in the second innings of your career, so to speak, that it would be the revolution that it turned out to be?
Not at all, because the main task, as I told you first, to get the project going, make some cars so that the promise which Mrs. Gandhi had made that this car will come on the road by the end of 1983 was fulfilled. After that, the target was that we had to get the production going and meet the production targets of 20,000 in 84, 85, and then go up to 100,000. Nobody believed that 100,000 cars a year could be sold in India, considering that till then maximum sales were 40,000 cars a year. And to sell 100,000 cars, in fact, even Suzuki said, look, don't put up the full capacity, go step by step. Because until you are sure that you'll sell 40,000, don't expand beyond that. The government told us the same thing informally. So we were just going day by day, doing what we had to do every day just to keep the steps which needed to be taken to ensure that somehow we could keep increasing production every year. That's all. There was no other thought of going beyond 100,000 ever in our mind.
And yet, of course, when the initial bookings happen, I think it took all calculations out of the picture, didn't it? The amount of
Uh,
bookings that you got.
Actually, the biggest surprise people got, including the market and the vendors and everybody, was that the large number of bookings that came in. The Maruti 800 at that time got bookings of, I think, 126,000 or something like that, something in 120. And considering that the yearly production was planned to be out of the 40,000 which we had for the second year, the Maruti 800 was only supposed to be half of that. So it was several years' sales. And then in 1985, we decided to change the model. And we took bookings again. And that time, the bookings were even larger. So it was clear at that time that 100,000 was certainly saleable. The question was, would we be able to produce them? I don't know what changed. I mean, it's just that we went, as I said, we looked just a day at a time and tried to get done what had to be done so that we could move forward. And the whole thing just kept moving, and the demand kept growing, and the production kept increasing. And all the people who were working in Maruti were so motivated and so much involved in taking up this challenge of meeting the targets on time and not slipping, that things just kept happening. And then we reached 100,000, and our engineers then worked to do various kinds of jugaad in the factory. And they increased production. We were running at 40% over capacity because expansion was not possible because there was no foreign exchange available for expansion. And while demand kept growing, we had no cars to manufacture and we couldn't expand. The first time we could put up another line was after 1991, when liberalization had taken place, and then government said, okay, if you can get a foreign exchange loan to finance the import component of the plant, then you can put up a second production line.
What were the biggest challenges in even taking that one day at a time to set up factory in a sense, right from scratch?
It was virtually a greenfield site, so everything had to be done afresh. Even the building which we inherited from Sanjay, we found that that building had various kinds of structural problems. It was not suitable. So the roof had to be strengthened. There had to be foam cement, as they say, put on the roof so that it could not be leaking all the time. And a lot of construction had to be done. Then importing equipment became a challenge because at that time you had to get domestic clearance from the DGTD to import anything in the way of capital goods. And if any local manufacturer made a statement that, look, I can make this equipment, the DGTD would tell us, sorry, we can't let you import this. And this was happening to a lot of our equipment. And the main production machines which we needed to get got stuck. Finally, we had to have a meeting with the industries minister, and we showed them the kind of products we were making and what was being made by HMT for Bajaj. I said, these are totally different products. It can't be done here. He cleared it at that level. And that kind of thing kept happening. The infrastructure was, in those days, in shambles, really. One didn't know when a ship would berth at the docks. We did not know how long it would take to unload the stuff or bring it from the port to the factory. That was not working. So component supplies from the vendors were all new. We couldn't rely on them that they would produce what they were supposed to produce, when they were supposed to produce. So getting components was a problem. People, fortunately, who joined us didn't cause problems. So one positive thing which we had was that within the factory, the workers and all were very much in line with what we wanted done. But it was these external factors which were most difficult at that time.
You left 25 years of being in the IAS to jump into the deep waters, the unknown waters. Was there any time where you sat down and said, where am I? Why am I here?
No, I think one was so much involved in what was it, one never thought of what could have been or should have been or I didn't do or what I missed or I didn't miss. There was just no time. We were going morning to evening, we were just immersed.
How did the transition happen from IAS to joining Maruti?
In the Ministry of Energy, happily working as a joint secretary. Mr. Krishnamurthy was at that time chairman of BHEL. He asked me, why don't you join me in BHEL? So I said, look, I'm quite happy where I am. I don't think I want to come there at this time. So he left it at that. Then after a couple of years, I went to the cabinet secretariat, and after a year I was going back to UP. He again came back to me. He said, look, by that time he had become secretary heavy industry. He said, why don't you come again and join in BHEL, because you'll find that better than what you're doing here. At that time, I said, okay, let me give it a chance, because maybe it'll get me some new skills and some new experience. So I decided to join BHEL. After 2 years, my deputation to BHEL ended. I was going back to the service. Krishnamurthy by that time had become the managing director of the newly established Maruti. This was in early 81. And I was in that gap between finishing the BHEL job and getting and joining the new government job. I was on leave. So he said, look, I've taken over Maruti now. Why don't you come and join me in Maruti and work with me? And that time, for various thoughts came and people advised again going to Maruti. But I said, again, it's a different experience. And instead of going back and doing something, I don't know what I'll be doing when I go back to the States. Let me work here and see what happens. I'll be on deputation for a year. I can decide. So I came to Maruti on deputation for a year. The real problem arose after that 1 year, when government said, now either you go back or you leave the IAS and join Maruti. That is the time when I really had to decide. And as I said, against all advice, I decided to be contrarian and take what seemed to be an absurd decision and leave the IAS, leave my position in the IAS and join Maruti.
And more than 40 years later, you're still there.
Who would have ever imagined that at this age I would still be working and I would still have a role to play in the company? It's not, these are all things which you can't plan, you can't imagine, you can't think they will ever happen. But sometimes in life, things happen which are totally unplanned for.
Everything that we write about, we hear about, we speak about, it's spoken of as, the journey of India's middle class, the dreams of India's middle class were out there for the middle class to grab. But actually, this car was not just for the middle class. I mean, in a sense, everybody wanted it. It became a status symbol, didn't it?
When it came, everybody wanted. Ratan Tata was driving the Maruti 800. Arun Nehru was driving the Maruti 800. Rajiv Gandhi drove the 800. I mean, everybody was driving the 800. Everybody wanted it. It was so much in demand because it was a very different car. In terms of drivability, in terms of reliability, in terms of acceleration, in terms of braking, it was so different from the existing ambassadors and Fiats in India.
Did you get non-stop phone calls asking for people for delivery of car, braking lines, all those things?
We had a manufacturer's quota like every company has. And within weeks of our having a manufacturing quota, somebody filed a PIL in the Supreme Court saying that Maruti cannot allot cars just like that. There must be a system. And the Supreme Court had several hearings to decide how the Maruti 800 should be allotted out of turn to people. Can you imagine Supreme Court hearings for deciding the allocation of Maruti 800 cars? It was that kind of a product. I mean, it defies all sense today if I say Supreme Court should decide how cars should be sold.
What was the waiting period like then?
We had done that computer draw to determine the order of delivery. And that list stretched to what was about over 3 years of production plan. And that meant that during that period, there were no new bookings. So the bookings which came initially were enough for more than 3 years. The car had a premium of 100% of its sale price. People bought the car and immediately sold it to somebody who wanted it and was willing to pay a price at double the price.
What fascinated the country with the Maruti 800, in your opinion?
I think for decades we had seen no changes in technology of any product. Under that license and control system, the private sector was prohibited virtually from getting any updates to the technology they were using if that meant going outside and spending foreign exchange. The government thing was that once you've got technology, now you must upgrade it yourself, which nobody was able to do. And so products had gradually over time become obsolete. Not only cars, everything which we're using had become obsolete. Suddenly they found a car which was up to the current international technology. It's the only product available in India that time, which was really a modern product. And I think the urge to have a reliable drivability is a great aspiration of human beings. Also, one of the consequences of this was that women found that they could now drive this car themselves and not bother to have a driver or somebody around with them, because when they were driving the other older cars in India, the reliability was so low that they did not ever venture out in a car alone. They had to have somebody with them. When they saw the Maruti and people started driving it, they realized that breakdowns were not going to happen. And one of the consequences, therefore, was that suddenly there was a spur to women drivers who wanted to drive themselves and enjoy the car. And that led to a whole lot of other changes. That's the way it was in those days. And I was amazed at what was happening, and people would stare at the car. When I first got a Maruti 800, I had a yellow Maruti 800 which had come in as a display car. I was driving it, and people would stop the car and people would crowd around and look at the car and say, "Oh, ye aane wali hai." I said, "Haan, ye aane wali hai." That's the kind of attraction it had in India. People were fascinated by something which was modern. But it shows, Joe, that people in India aspire to have the best of products. They were denied for too long. This was the first time they got a chance to see something like that. And it was not as if it was planned. It just happened virtually by accident. What's the income levels in people's pockets today, the kind of development which has taken place, the economic growth which has happened, has created a market in India today. A small market maybe, but in terms of numbers, it's still large, which is comparable to any market abroad. I mean, this would be easily a market in terms of buying power comparable to Europe. These people want the best of everything. And that's where this market size is happening. But we sometimes tend to forget that there's a huge market of India where people struggle to buy scooters. And that market, people driving scooters in India, is more than 150, 170 million scooter owners. This market collapsed when the prices went up because of BS6. We lost about 1/3 of the scooter sales that period. It's only now coming back. So there is also a market in India which is something similar to what exists in Africa. This market has lost the ability even to keep growing in the small car market because of the cost factor, BS6, new emission laws, new safety laws and things. But there's other market which doesn't care about cost and which will only want the best of products.
Your partnership with Suzuki, that's a defining part of this entire journey. And I actually read somewhere that, Suzuki was taken aback when you projected your budget and said that you would have profits within the first year. How flawless or not very smooth, whichever way you want to say it, was the coming together of with Suzuki?
Actually, from the time we met Mr. Suzuki in Tokyo in February 1981. one. There was a meeting of minds between him and Mr. Krishnamurti and myself. And with him, there was never any occasion where there was a serious difference of opinion and everything. He listened and he mostly accepted what we said. There were occasions where with people below him, there were serious differences of opinion. But every time we ultimately had to go to Osamu Suzuki and he sorted out matters so that we didn't feel that we were not being given a fair hearing. So I think it was this confidence which O. Suzuki had in ultimately me, because Krishnamurti went away after 3-4 years, which was the defining feature of how management ran throughout this period. When I had my problems with the government and government got involved in a lot of cases and company law projects, Suzuki actually impleaded itself in one of the cases and fought on my behalf against government. It was that kind of a relationship and confidence in each other and trust in each other. And that is what has continued till today.
Those years, the spat with the government, the CBI cases, did it take a toll?
I think it must have, because we were under a lot of stress in the family and everywhere. But it didn't interfere with the work. The work carried on. And then, as you know, I retired as MD in 1997. The cases were all very much on at that time. They continued after that also. And at that time, then there was not any direct responsibility on me, although I continued my relationship with Suzuki and continued to advise them and work with them. And then I came back in 2003 on the board of Maruti, 2007 as the chairman of the board. Cases were still continuing. They hadn't ended.
Is there anything that you would have done differently in hindsight?
And many times in the beginning also, we had tried to convince government that reduce the equities and bring in some outside shareholders so that this doesn't remain a government company. It never happened, but that's one of the regrets I have, is that I wish we could have made this into a non-PSU much earlier than what we did. I think the other probable thing is that maybe we should have found a way of keeping relations with government a little smoother after 94, 95, something around that time. Whether it could have been done without compromising on certain basic principles, I'm not sure. Because the people who were anti-me, anti-Maruti, all wanted things to be done which, at least I felt, were not in the interest of the company at all. So it was difficult. I mean, I did get into problems, but I believe working in India with government is not easy.
And what kind of a work-life balance did you have then?
Not much. It was all work. I mean, we couldn't even go on holidays. Once we planned a holiday, at the last minute we had to cancel it because something else came up. I think my wife was not very happy with the way we were living. And she had to manage so many things which I couldn't do. But I had to be in office before 9 o'clock. And I never got back before 7, 8 in the evening. So there was not much time for the family. And weekends never meant weekend really.
And you're still not slacking off. Your next book is out for release, isn't it?
Yeah, well, now I have more time to do what you say. I've written books and articles and things like that. The new book is coming out, and this reflects, I think, the sum of what essentially I've learned in all these 40 years about what makes for competitive manufacturing. You know, India has been struggling to grow its manufacturing for all these years. Even Mr. Modi, despite all the reforms he's made, all the changes he's made in procedures, abolished old laws and obsolete laws and brought in new laws and all this, the rate of growth of manufacturing in India is still not adequate at all. And it's clear that government actions do not lead to growth of manufacturing competitiveness. It has to be done by the companies. We became globally competitive despite all the difficulties of doing business in India which existed at that time. Government actions, therefore, even bad actions, didn't really impinge on the ability of managements to excel if they adopted the right course of action. If you can get the employees of the company in line with the objectives of the company, and if all the employees, including the workers, and they are about 70% of the company, if they believe that their future is linked to the future of the company, and if the company does better and grows and prospers, they will also grow and prosper, then I think the world will be our oyster. We can make all our companies much, much more competitive. I don't think Mr. Modi or the governments in the states or anywhere will have to work so hard to try and make manufacturing in India grow faster. I think the answer lies in managements of companies understanding that workers, by virtue of their experience on the lines, on the shop floor, acquire knowledge and insights into manufacturing, which are not available with any engineer. The secret of management is how to get these guys to cooperate and understand what management inputs they can give, which will make the company better than everybody else, and they can do it. Maruti succeeded because it had the workers working as if they were partners in the company. Huge difference. I think it's that we undervalue people who do work with their hands, that we do not respect people for their skills. We do not understand that you can never succeed unless you have all members of your organization working as a team. And team members then don't look down upon others, this guy is not educated, or this guy is living in a different way, or his social graces are different, or he doesn't know how to sit on a table and eat with a fork and a knife. I think you have to respect people as being different, having different responsibilities, doing different things, and look at the contribution they will make to building the country. Don't look upon people and create the kind of hierarchy based on social graces and education. I think look upon people as people. Sure.
How special has the Maruti story been for you? How special has this journey been for you?
I think it's changed my life. Normally, as a civil servant, I should have retired at the age of 58, maybe got 2, 3, 4 years more of some other job, and that's it. And I would have been lacking in the kind of experience and knowledge which I've gained, but that's one part. But the biggest satisfaction, Joe, I have is that by doing what has happened in Maruti, by getting everybody working together, we have not only created a modern automobile industry in India, but we have provided means by which millions of people in India are living a better life. People, whether they are workers, all our workers except who are fresh joinees are paying income tax. Their children are being educated in DPS schools. They have houses. Their children are working in consultancy companies, multinationals. So this ability or the result of changing people's life for the better, of creating value in the country, of helping people to do things which they haven't done. Many of these people in the vendors and all, they have become, actually one of them is a billionaire now. Now helping to make this happen, I think is what makes life worth living.
Thank you for speaking to me. It's been so engrossing. And even though I think I know a lot, I didn't know a lot. So it was lovely. Thank you.